Welcome to In the Zone. Welcome to number 61 here. And special thank you to Paul Dingham and Bruce Holliday and Reed Pack in the control room taking care of us all the time. Sitting across from me, we've got a Mariner guy here, Steve McConnell. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. How you doing, Craig? Doing
good. As I mentioned to you before, there's no trick questions. You can't get anything wrong, so there's no test here afterwards. So it's a pretty casual conversation with you and I. And you and I have known each other since the 70s.
Correct.
Going way back.
Yep.
Steve, tell us where you were born and raised.
I was born in Newport, Rhode Island.
See, it's something I didn't know.
Yeah, my dad was in the Navy.
Okay.
And I was born in Newport, Rhode Island at a naval hospital. Don't know how long we stayed there. And then my parents moved back from Newport, Rhode Island. I do know, and I've seen pictures, that they were in a 10 by 20 trailer on the base.
With one child?
One child.
Okay.
And then we moved back from Newport, Rhode Island, and moved back to Detroit area.
Okay.
Because that's where my mom and dad both grew up in Detroit area. My dad grew up on Kircherville and Dickerson area, and my mom grew up between Outer Drive and Chalmers in that area.
Back in the heyday of
Back
growing up in Detroit.
Yeah, in Detroit. It was a good area.
Yeah.
My mom's father worked for Red Wing National Brooch, and we used to go to, back in the day, it was all the Tiger baseball games when you got a hat, you got a real bat, and you got a baseball. So my grandfather all took us to many different games down there, and I think he probably got them from his work.
Sure.
It was a big company. And
back when tickets were probably like $5.
yeah, it wasn't that much. It was the old
Right.
Tiger Stadium too.
Right.
And it was nice.
Yeah.
And then in the early 60s, I think it was maybe 64, 63, my parents bought a house in Clinton Township between 14 and 15 Mile Road, and it was on Williamson Street. And it was a 900 square foot home, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, downstairs, kitchen, living room, and I think they paid $9,999 for it. So say 10 grand.
Yeah. A lot of money back then, though.
Yes,
yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
And then in 1970, my mom and my dad always wanted to get a getaway from there. And they found a house in Marine City on Marine City Highway. And the owners was John Batchelor. Everybody knows John Batchelor from Marine City.
Yeah.
And it was his family home. And they bought it on a land contract for $21,000, set on 2.5 acres. But John let my mom and dad use the property on both sides to put gardens in, because my mom and dad, we always put big gardens when you had 5 kids to feed.
Yes.
So.
Okay. Which is just west of the Marine City Nursery.
Yes, just west on the south side of the road.
Yep. Which we'll talk about that. We're still there.
Yeah, still there.
So your mother, father, siblings, give us a little rundown of all of them.
My dad had...
You're the oldest.
I'm the oldest. I have a brother named Ed. He was born in 1961, March 31st. I do remember a lot of dates.
Okay.
Then it was my brother Chris.
Yep.
He was born in 1962. And I'm trying to remember when Tom was born. It was either 63 or 65.
Right.
I have a brother named Tom McConnell. He graduated in...
I'm guessing 65 only because he's a couple
He
years.
graduated in 83.
Yep.
So.
2 years behind Chris and I.
Yep. And then my brother Tim, he was born in 68. And everything was going good. We had 5 boys. And all of a sudden, the year I graduated in 77, my mom had a oops, as we call it. And it was my brother Michael. And because there was 8 years between Timmy and Michael, Mom and Dad decided to have another one, and they had a girl.
Okay. Finally got the girl.
Finally got a girl. They always wanted, so they quit.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's all my family.
Yep.
One has passed away.
Yep.
My brother Chris passed away in 2011. He had a massive heart attack. So, yep.
Chris and I went to school together. So,
Yep.
As I always say, back in those days, if you had a big family like I did or you did, you can sort of gauge ages off of the other family, right?
Right.
Saying
We always played baseball on the property. We cut the grass in the back part. We had a baseball diamond.
Yep.
Lost many of baseballs because it would go in the weeds and we couldn't find them.
Yep.
But we would always
find another one.
Parents wouldn't let us go into town, so we Did a lot of
Right
activities
there.
at home
Yep,
on the
yep.
property. So
So you graduated from Marine City High School in 1977.
yes, I did.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, there's no teachers left there that were taught when you and I were there.
Nope.
Couple years ago, I remember there was a few there, but they're gone now. And,
yeah.
new generation of teachers.
Yeah, a lot of different ones. No, I wouldn't know anybody there no more.
Yeah. So you chose to go into not college but other work.
To work. I went to work. For a couple months, I was working at a plastic factory on DeGursey, working midnights. And I don't remember when I left there, but in 1978, I got an opportunity to go work for a Italian bakery on Gratiot in Roseville called Detroit Italian. And I worked there for 10 years.
Okay.
And driving back and forth.
Were you a baker?
I ran a machine that cut the dough it was a Panamat that went up and poofed up, and then it came down and they rolled it into buns, onion rolls, hamburger buns,
Sure.
sub buns, different things like that. But I ran that machine. I also learned how to run the ovens.
Sure.
But my main job was to right there.
And that type of role in a bakery is different than most other jobs in the sense that you're going in at what time?
I had to be there at 3:30 in the morning.
Right. You're sitting there
3:30,
baking when
4
everybody's
o'clock.
sleeping.
Yeah. I worked Monday morning, Tuesday night, Thursday, Friday morning, and then Saturday morning. That was my 5 days a week.
And it had to be a little bit of a warm place to work.
Very warm.
Yeah.
They wear T-shirts and shorts, but wore white pants. You wore stuff that be cool. But you're
Are they
always
still
covered.
in business?
No, it's
Okay.
closed.
Okay. 'Cause a lot of bakeries have gone by the wayside.
Yeah. They were very big, powerful people that owned that place at one time.
Okay. So you worked a bakery.
Yes.
What led you to the next opportunity?
Well, make a long story short, I had an incident with my hand in 1985. And then when my lawsuit came up, I had to leave.
Okay.
So then I worked for I worked at McDonald's maintenance for a while, cleaning up Marine City's McDonald's.
Oh, okay.
At night, Jackie Owens and Rick Wood I worked with
Okay.
there. And I did that for a year and a half or so. And then I worked at a small piece place and the owner was Glenn Vandenboom. And so they approached me. I was working afternoons. I was in charge of the afternoon crew. And he approached me and says, how would you like to drive my truck to Livonia and to Port Huron for the piece work to
You're
drive
sort
it?
of like a young guy.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, I was young.
Probably more money, sure.
Yeah, a little bit more extra money, and he paid for it. He gave me the money to
Go get your license.
go get your chauffeur's license.
Okay.
So I left, I did that, and then my uncle knew this gentleman that just got this big job working for a big oil company in Detroit, and a little bit better some money.
And you probably had never heard of it at that
I
time,
never heard
right?
of that company,
Yeah.
never. And so my Uncle Ed knew this gentleman named Dennis Hagan, and he was up in higher management there. So he got me the application, I filled it out, and I drove down to East Warren and St. Albert in Detroit,
Yep.
and it was right down the street from Thornapple Valley,
Right.
where they used to slaughter the
Yes.
pigs back in
Yep.
the day.
Yep.
And I went in for my interview, and I had it all filled out, and so Mr. Hagan goes, how do you know Edward Spaulding? And I went, that's my uncle. He said, that's the best reference you can have on anything. I went, oh, cool.
Sure.
So I got a job, and what I did for Vesco, went to all the automotive, went to lots
So
of
then
dealers.
let's explain it to our viewers here. That's Vesco Oil Company.
Yeah, Vesco Oil.
And you were about to explain. Go ahead.
I did the parts washer division,
Okay. So
which
a parts washer, for
Tank.
people that don't know what it is, it's the piece of equipment that a mechanic uses to wash the parts
Off a car.
before he puts them back in,
Yep.
maybe.
Yeah, clean them up, clean the dirt, the grime off, top.
And they're using industrial cleaners to do
Yeah,
it.
it's a mineral spirits. It's a recyclable solvent,
Okay.
and that's what I did for 28 years.
Now, what I find intriguing about that, and I mentioned to you before we started here, is that a lot of people don't know even today maybe who Vesco is. They might have seen a truck, but they just don't know what they do. And we'll get into that a little bit, but it's like most everybody that's watching has had a product similar to, if it's not the exact product, that has touched their car,
Yep.
and they don't even know it.
Yeah. Rust proofing.
Yeah. So you are calling on car dealers,
Yep.
predominantly.
Yeah, a lot of car dealerships.
Go ahead and explain a little more.
The parts washer was, like you said, it was the parts cleaner tank. They would take it and they would clean off, set it aside, dry. But I also picked up automotive waste, like waste gas,
Yep.
waste diesel fuel. So if somebody put the wrong fuel, like if you put gasoline in diesel,
Yeah.
it would go to the dealership. We'd pick that up, and basically it was that. Anything to do with automotive waste, that's what I
Sure.
did.
And so you'd have routes, basically.
Yep. I took care of everything on the northeast side of the plant, from the east side of Detroit all the way up to Lexington. I used to do Lapeer
Okay.
for a while.
How far west?
I always did I did Troy,
Okay.
Rochester Hills, a little bit of Bloomfield Hills. I used to take care of the big Mercedes dealership
Yep.
on Woodward. Did that for a long, long time, and then after a while, when the company went farther out, I got shipped out to Lansing quite a bit, doing,
Now let me ask you, from a perspective of a territory like that, from downtown Detroit to Lexington and say west to Southfield, that's a lot of territory.
Right.
How often would you see your customers? Every couple weeks, 3 weeks, 5 weeks?
Well, mainly the dealerships, I seen them every 4 weeks.
Okay. Okay.
Because they were on a 4-week or 8-week
Rotation.
rotation. I was always in there.
So there had to be times when you were really pinched for time to get to certain dealers by certain times.
Yeah, they gave me a pile, a stack of stuff that I came up when it was supposed to be serviced, and then my boss would always keep it in he'd give me so many places from the east side, like
Sure.
Clinton Township, Mount Clemens,
Yep.
Roseville, East Point, so
Right.
on. And then I would do that and go back in. And then the next day I would go do Clinton Township, Chesterfield, New Baltimore,
Right.
Marine City.
Use your time wisely and get
Yeah,
as
I
many
just
as you
took
can.
my time. Yeah, I always did I never came back with not any bills back. All bills were always completed.
Right.
I never took anything back. I made sure the job was done.
I know over the years you and I have had discussions and talked about different dealers, because I called on them in a different industry, but called on almost all the dealers you called on.
Oh,
So
yeah.
some better than others.
Yep. Oh yeah, I met a lot of owners.
Yep.
My time.
Who, McInerney?
Mr. McInerney. I
Yep.
met Mr. Cosley.
Yep.
He was a
Straight up guy.
straight up man. You did it the way he wanted it.
Yep.
I met quite a few.
Troy Motor Mall.
Troy
people,
Motor
yeah.
Mall. There was a lot out there I got to know. Suburban
Yep.
Group. The guy, Mr. Fisher,
Yep.
met him a few times. A lot of owners I got to meet. Bill Fox Chevrolet on Rochester Road.
Yep.
I met his son. I met the owned the Toyota dealership. He was a really nice man.
Yeah, yeah.
So they were all,
So you basically have seen and called on just about every car dealership
yes.
from that area.
Yep.
If there's a car dealership out there in that
I
area,
was
you
there.
covered on them.
I was there.
At one point
From
or another.
Cadillacs to Chevys to Buicks to Fords to Mercedes to Jags. I've been to them all.
Now, did that ever lead you to refer anybody to one dealer or another because they treated you better?
Mhm.
Yeah, I would
Yes.
think so.
Yep.
And so, like you say, the folks over there in Birmingham that run the Mercedes dealer,
Yep.
they've got the ones in Rochester as well, and the
Yep.
ones in Novi as well.
Yep,
So,
they own 3 of them.
yeah. So it's interesting to.
So, for example, Somerset Buick.
Yep.
I got to know the service director very well. And Vesco came out with what they call this visible solution. Instead of buying the 55-gallon drums of windshield washer solvent and had them take over their area, Vesco started this making our own. And they put us 100 and 250-gallon tank in there, and it was in there. So I told the service director, who I got to know really well, I told him about it. So next thing I know, I get a phone call from a gentleman named Jimmy Catalino, who was working for Vesco at that time. He was in charge of all the Valvoline salesmen.
Sure.
And called me up, and he says, I understand you landed the visible solution at Somerset Buick. And I said, yeah. I told him about it. He says, good job. He says, how would you like to go to a Tiger ball game? I said, sure. Why not? So he says, pick a date and I'll get you tickets. And first time I went to Comerica Park, we were in the upper deck, right at the glass, looking down at the Tigers dugout. Got a parking pass, not much walking distance. Yeah.
Well, knowing you and your personality, you know, you've got a gift of gab to talk to people.
Oh, yes.
And it's
I learned that after a while.
And it's nothing more than being forthright, speaking to people and asking a couple questions, right?
I was always friendly.
Yeah, always ask a couple questions and
I
how's this going, how's that going?
I've always treated people with respect.
Yep. And I think that shows the reason you were there for how many years?
28 years.
28 years, exactly. And I don't imagine there's many people that were on the routes doing what you did for much longer than that, right?
No. There was 4 of us that did the same job in different areas, and then one retired, and a few years later he passed away, I heard. And another gentleman that took over my side, and he ended up passing away too.
And today they probably split it up and it's 2 routes.
I don't know what they do. My one boss says, yeah, come back so you can show them how to do it, but I can't do that job anymore.
That's a young man's job, right?
Yes, climbing up in a truck.
Let's talk a little bit about like we had initially talked about the products. So you do what do you call the parts cleaner? Parts cleaner. So that is it's an actual tank, if you will?
It's a machine that sits on either a 16-gallon keg or a 30-gallon keg. The 16-gallon keg had 10 gallons of solvent in it, and then the 30-gallon keg had 20 gallons on it.
And is that recycling it?
No,
and filtering?
it's a pump in it, pumps it up through a nozzle and a brush, a hose and a brush. Basically, we took them in, we wheeled a drum in a hand cart, picked the machine up, put it from one drum to another.
And how often? So they go through once a month?
Yeah, once a month. It depends how busy or dirty they got it. And then it went back in the truck. We had to tag it. So the people that worked the still, they would dump the trucks and reload it for the night. I'd have to figure out what I needed.
Now, is that product as prevalent today as it's always been? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's a recyclable solvent. We have a still process at the main warehouse in Detroit that cleans it up, separates the dirt and the oil, and put it back out.
Take the sludge and do something else with it. Okay. And so what other products did you handle?
After a while, I got to sell hand soap, brake clean. I did pretty good. Sure. I sold it to a lot of dealerships, a lot of automotive shops in the area. The hand soap was very good. It got your hands nice and clean.
Well, especially for guys that are working on grease all day, right?
Oh, yeah. And it was a very good product. And I made extra money. Sure. Every quarter for selling stuff off my truck, I would get a quarterly check from Vesco. Okay. And then after a while, we only dealt with body shop dealerships at one time. We only took care of their waste paint. We'd go in and service a paint gun cleaner. Basically, it was a thinner, and they put their guns in it and clean it up. And we'd have to take the old stuff out, whatever. So, Okay. But then our boss, he says, go out and get some new accounts. So I'd stopped at different body shops all over the place. So for doing that, if I landed a new account, I got so much money for picking up new accounts. Okay. But I always made a personal goal. Every month or every quarter, I would sell at least over $300
of extra product.
To make it so I got money. I brought home anywhere from $300 to $500 every quarter.
Just selling a few extra products.
Just selling extra products. And landing new accounts. I landed some big machines at American Axle in Detroit. When they went back to Detroit, I got to know some people at American Axle. When they came out of Rochester Hills, they went back into Detroit, and they redid some old buildings that American Axle used to own. And I landed some big machines in there. Well, then those hold 80 gallons of product in it. Well, then I thought, like this one gentleman that used to work, he says, you land these big accounts, you got to go back in and clean it. And then I went, no, that's all right. And after a while, we kind of understood why he said,
you're back.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
They also do undercoating, you had mentioned.
Yeah, they did rust proofing for a very long, long time.
They still?
No.
Okay.
They got out of it. Okay. Yeah, they got out of it in probably the 2000s. Okay. They still had certain depots and areas that they would do the rust proofing. Yeah. They also did stereos, putting radios, different radios in cars and stuff.
Back in the day, that was popular. Back in
Yes.
our high school era.
Yes, yes, they did that a lot.
Okay.
But basically, they just did they were the largest Valvoline oil distributor for the United States for a long time.
Yep.
And right now they are the largest ExxonMobil distributor in the United States.
Okay.
When I started working for them, they had one plant in Detroit, on East Warren and St. Albert. Then they bought in I started in 91, so I think it was like 94, 95. They bought a company, Diamond Oil, in Grand Rapids. So they bought them out. So then they wanted the upper part of Michigan, so they built a plant up in Mansalona.
Okay.
If anybody knows what that is.
Yep.
And then there was another company that they bought out by the Zilwaukee Bridge.
Okay.
And they built a plant as you're going down and heading, up north. You can look to your left and you can see a big plant that says Vesco Oil.
Okay.
So they have 4 plants in Michigan. Well, then they branched it out.
Probably to Toledo.
No, Medina, Ohio.
Okay. Yep.
There was a company, oil distributor, that was doing Valvoline and Pennzoil. So Pennzoil went to them and says, if you want to keep us, you need to get rid of Valvoline. Okay. So being that we were the largest Valvoline oil distributor in Michigan, Valvoline went to Mr. Epstein and says, here's 900 new accounts in Medina, Ohio area.
Okay.
Do you want it? Of course, they said, sure. So it took a year and a half to build a plant there, and they opened that one up.
Okay.
Well, we had guys that were delivering every day. Would be a different guy with 2 guys. They would deliver his product, and they would come back and forth, and that was a 10, 12 hours trip.
Sure. Oh yeah.
And then they had that, and then they bought another company, family-owned business in Washington, Ohio. Approached Vesco. They were mobile to the oil distributor. They wanted to retire, but family member, so they got that one. And I don't know where Blacklick, Ohio is, but
I've heard of it, but
yes,
I don't either.
but they opened that up as a car bright.
Okay.
Because all the waxes and
Yep.
soaps, the detail and stuff for cars. And they had a young man that moved down there and took care of automotive places down there. And then just after I retired in 17, they bought another company out in Dayton, Ohio. So they own 8 warehouses between Michigan and Ohio. And they also own a mock distributor company in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Sort of growing.
And it's all family owned.
Yep.
And right now,
3rd generation?
yes.
Okay.
The daughter, Lily. Yeah, Lily
Lily and
Epstein.
Lena, right.
Lena and Lily are both own it, but Mrs. Epstein is the main.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's a mother and 1 daughter, and they own Vesco.
It's sort of a fascinating story if you look at where it started
Yeah.
and where they've gone to today.
When I started, Richard Epstein owned it, and working for them, and then he died of leukemia. Very young age. He was only 48.
Okay.
But Mr. Epstein, the father, had sent both of his kids to become lawyers.
Oh, okay.
So they were lawyers. And to make a long story short, Don just died a couple years ago. Very great young person. He'd give you his shirt right off the bat for anybody. Very, very good man to work for. So.
Good to hear.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about the title I give you as a Mariners super fan, and let's talk about that a little bit. Going back to not only did you graduate from Marine City, but you've been to just about every high school football game since about the early 70s.
Yeah, I went to a lot, and then I broke away for a while, and then I went to when my brother Tim was playing.
Yep.
And he graduated in '87, so I went to a lot of his games. I went to a lot of his baseball games and his football games.
Yep.
And then took a little break for a while. And in the 2000s, my nephew Chad,
Yep.
my brother Chris's son, was playing football. So I started back probably in 2006.
Yep.
Every Friday night, my wife and I would go to the games,
Right.
watching my nephew play, watching, Marine City win in the 2007. So watching all those games. So.
And one of the intriguing connections to Coach Glodich is your uncle.
Yes.
Your uncle.
Mr. Spalding, Ed Spalding.
Right.
My uncle was a school teacher at Warren Fitzgerald.
And it happened to be the
Yes.
high school that Ron Glodich went to.
Yes. Yeah. Ron graduated, and I don't know what year. It was probably after. I'm a little
About
older.
81, 82.
Yeah,
I
I'm a
can't
little
remember.
older than he is.
Yeah.
And so my uncle was a school teacher and mentor,
Sure.
as he would say.
Yep.
And so, yeah. And then Tony Scarcelli was here first.
Yep.
My brother Tim graduated in 87. So Tony was here first, and there were some openings. And at that time, Marine City High School never hired anybody that graduated from Marine City. It was always outsourced, coming from area. And my uncle Ed knew Ron.
Yeah.
He got his teaching degree. He was looking for a job. And my uncle knew some people from Marine City and told Ron to go to Marine City.
And he was a young buck back then.
Yeah, just, out of college, whatever.
Yeah.
And he got in right away.
Yeah.
And he was here until
Yes.
yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now, when you're at football games on Friday night in the hometown Mariners stands, do you ever switch your seat?
Nope. For the longest time, when I was able to go all the way to the top, I sat up there all the
Right.
time. We sat by Dave Heslop
Yep.
and I'm trying to think of Joe's.
Slankster. Harvey Slankster.
Harvey Slankster. We sat right next to him. That was everybody knew whose seats were
Yep.
where.
Yeah.
Everybody, Crystal Grant and Harris always sat up there.
Yeah.
We always sat there together, but the older I got and then my body's getting older, I can't make it to the top anymore. So
So where are you sitting now?
we go up, we sat by the band on this
Yep.
side, and it was just enough that I can get up and find a park.
So half a dozen rows up
Yep,
to the left of our Channel 6
Yep.
booth?
yep,
Okay.
yep.
I'll look for you in the fall.
Yeah.
Same spot, same
We'll be
place,
there.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Seen a lot of exciting games over the years.
Oh, lots.
Give me a couple that stick out in your mind.
Well, of course, through 2007, when Brandon Kay was a good quarterback from Marine City, and we talked earlier about the one that he came back after halftime beating Flint Powers,
Yep. Yep.
took it on his shoulders, beating Country Day.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Yes.
Because if you look on paper,
Yeah, it's
not possible, right?
yeah. When they can recruit.
Right.
And that game was awesome. In fact, is when we killed them in Ford Field.
Yeah.
I mean, the town was completely empty.
Yep.
Everybody was at Ford Field. There was orange and black from one end zone to the other end zone.
Yep.
And then went to a lot of games with my nephew.
Yep.
We all traveled out to Williamston, and we lost to that. I can't remember the team. Who did we lose to?
I know, but I can't remember either. I remember
neither.
the Williamston game.
Yeah, we went out. It was a nice day.
Yeah, it was a nice day. We
Yeah.
were on the top of the box, and it was
Yeah.
a beautiful day.
Yeah, we went out there, but they ended up winning it. They
Yeah.
won the states that year, but they were a very good, powerful team. And then we always went to the games.
How about the cold one?
We played Lansing Sexton.
Yes.
We went out to Brandon.
Yeah, Ortonville, Brandon.
Ortonville,
it was about
Brandon.
4 degrees.
Yes.
It was cold.
Yeah. My daughter was in the band. My daughter played the flute,
Yeah.
but they also were the part of the prep band for all the football games. And of course, we traveled, so it was cold.
Oh, real cold.
Yeah,
It was even cold inside.
I know a lot. We were sitting on the visitor side, and the wind was coming from the. Yeah,
Yeah, it was crazy.
that was.
Hey, if I end this interview and you don't talk about your wife and your child,
I'll
we're going to
be
be
in
in
trouble.
big trouble.
I was married once before, ended up getting divorced, and then I met my wife now, Norma Frank.
Yep.
Met her, and we dated for a while, but I was working, and also I drove limousines for Satisfaction Limousine Service for
enough.
5 years.
Yeah.
A lot of stories there too, but I won't talk about that. Did that, and then I met my wife, and how I proposed to her is Maria had this called romantic getaway. So limo would take you up. At that time it was the Thomas Edison Inn.
Yeah.
Now it's Doubletree.
Yeah.
And spend the night while I proposed to her up at the Thomas Edison Inn.
Okay.
Limo took us there, and limos took us home. So it was a good thing because it wasn't a cold ride home.
Right.
And then we got married a year and a half later, and then we had one child because she was married once before too.
Okay.
We've been married, this year will be 29 years on August 20th.
Okay.
And in 1997, we were blessed with a child, and I had a girl. So, and her name is Amber.
Right. So the two ladies keep you in check.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming in. Appreciate the discussion. We'll look for you on the Mariners sidelines as August comes into September as we talk about football.
Yeah.
And if you or anybody else knows of anybody that would be interesting like Steve or anybody else, the phone number's there, 586-707-5811. Again, a special thank you to Paul Dingham and Bruce Holliday and Reed Packin in the control room that make this possible. And this will be number 61 of In the Zone in the books. We'll see you next time.